So while you're thinking about whether or not to move in second, I'll add that the current contract was approved by council as a one-time setup cost of $4,393 with an annual service fee of $957.13. That is not in fact what the contract says with Blackboard or what their service, their proposal for services say. So we need to have you, if you do in fact want to spend that money to have that service, you need to authorize that actual expenditure correctly, for lack of a better word, which would be for that cost on an annual basis, the total cost of $5,350. It wasn't a one-time cost of $4,000 something and then an annual $957. It's important for a couple of reasons. Number one, you didn't authorize it that way to begin with. Number two, our entire line item in the budget for communications is $5,000 total. That includes phones and so on and so forth. So this would have an impact. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to break the bank, but in terms of moving into the budget for next year, the communications budget will be impacted significantly.
And if this is not moved in second, what are we, what's
We don't renew the contract.
Okay, but
You will lose the services.
Right, you'll lose the services, and we would have to explore other options for providing that service.
How many people are connected to this service?
500-600, the person has said.
I think via email, when they signed up for it, it's around 500, 600.
Are these people that signed up directly in there, or were they
Yes.
imported into the system? There's a big
They
difference.
signed up there, but the people that were on the previous system were sent messages that, you know, you're gonna be terminated, and if you don't belong, sign up under the new program. So those are all people that have signed up.
Do you happen to have a list of those people?
I think we do, yeah.
That's just on the email side, though. That's on the email side. The phone side, right, for the call out, that's the service they provide, is it's their phone list. They
Okay.
provide the updated phone list. You call out via their list.
Did we ever use that?
Yeah,
We did.
I think
For
the
like what?
original message went out via phone message. Because when I went home, there was a message on my phone left by Jamie, but it was the mess.
No, she means since then.
Oh,
Like,
Have
have
we
we
used the
actually
phone?
used their services? Have we had to use it where, right, where we call it out? Is
Okay.
that what you're asking?
Yeah, I've never
Yeah,
gotten a
that's
call,
what
but
I
that's
wanted to
not to
know.
say we haven't used
there
it.
was this one call made, like I said, at the very beginning, just to do a test run. And a few people called and said, you know, you called my number, but I'm not in the area anymore. So we actually were able to remove them from the call-out list. But yeah, it does go out to the mass area via phone call.
Charisma does an email once a month about like community events, but the phone, I don't think has been used.
No.
Like, we did it in case of an emergency that we could say, gas leak.
Mhm.
We could put out that there's maybe no garbage pickup tomorrow due to snow emergency
Right.
or something. And that would go out to everybody's phones in the area.
So we haven't utilized it to its full capacity,
No,
and it's like $1 a year per resident.
Mm-hmm.
you have only 91.
Then you do
Now,
like
the
a-
police will start to use it for their crime watch and crime alert.
We just have to explore other avenues we can do with it.
do it like one of those opt-ins on Facebook. I see those type of things out there all the time, like Carleton has a 2-hour delay that people that have opted in on Facebook get notification. And that doesn't, I don't believe that would cost anything.
That's an opt-in versus a push-out. So this is a push-out service. We could create a Twitter page or a Facebook page and post information there, and people could sign up to receive alerts. But this system sends it out whether you want it or not over the phone. And if you want it via email, then you sign up and we send it out via email.
Well, for example, I got one where I live this weekend telling me that they were running low on salt and that they would not be going out to plow until the snow event ended. So we knew that our roads were not going to get plowed until, so that's the kind of thing you can use it for.
I guess we're balancing.
So we're not really using it to its fullest potential, and we're paying not just $957 for annual services, we're paying $5,300.
Correct.
I'm trying to put it in perspective, though, if it's like less than $1 per resident, is the value there? If we actually used it
If we don't renew, are there any penalties or anything? It's at renewal stage, so we don't have to renew.
Yeah, they didn't give us much notice. The contract's up February 27th. We just found out last week.
John, you can use it to broadcast in specific areas too, so if you have a water main break, or if you have construction going on and you need to update
Mhm.
in specific areas, so just because you haven't used it, doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lot of value.
Yeah,
depending on-
the system set up, it actually has a map of the borough. If you wanted to go to a specific area, you
Right.
actually draw the line on the area, and it would target just those phones, just that
Right.
area.
Okay, so moving on, I'm not hearing any second or any,
It hasn't been moved.
no.
I'll move it.
John, I think you should call them and ask them if they'll continue the contract for a little while till we have more time to explore it. We signed up for this thing under a false pretense, and obviously that's coming to light now in less than a 10-day notice. So we need more time to perhaps explore their options. We thought we were gonna pay $900 a year, we have to pay $5,000 a year. That's,
Okay, so I will ask for a month or 60-day extensions to allow us to find other options or to renegotiate some other additional costs with Blackboard. Are we okay with that?
Just table this for now?
On the motion,
Just
no
dies.
second, the motion just dies.
Okay, so we'll cut the table. Okay, moving on then to blight and abandoned properties. Mr. Daly, would you like to speak to?
Well, I'll just give some background. We are working on, Councilwoman Whitesell and I are working on getting the Blight and Abandonment Committee up and running. We tentatively have a meeting scheduled for next Monday, March 2nd, and we hope to begin development of a broader program for blight and abandonment, and the intern that Deb talked about will be an important piece of that program. Just by way of example, we have, on an ongoing basis, always have had demolitions via the CDBG program, one of which was 13 Union, which you're going to see on your agenda here in a minute, and one of the ones that's pending is 217 Lincoln, and John's going to give you an update on that.
Yes, 217 Lincoln is a abandoned property. It was owned by an individual by the name of Max Alston. We ordered a title search on the property some time ago. Mr. Alston died in late 2004. He did have a will, and there was an estate open for him. The property in question was left to a brother and a sister and his nephew. His nephew was also appointed as the executor of his estate, named by a person by the name of Clarence Trent, who lives in Pittsburgh, and as far as we know, he's still in the here and now. There was also in the title search revealed a $15,000 home equity line of credit mortgage on the property. It was with National City. Of course, National City is no more. I contacted PNC Bank. PNC indicated that the loan is not active. They are actually in the process of having the mortgage satisfied. The reason that's a good thing, when the time comes to file a court action, because we're after an order of court saying go ahead and knock the structure down. You have to name not only the owner of the property, but you have to name as a defendant anybody with a secured interest in the property. Having PNC satisfy the mortgage means we don't have to name PNC as a defendant. I've also tried to reach out to Mr. Trent. I did direct a letter to him. I copied both John and Debbie with that letter saying, hey, you know, it's our understanding your uncle owned this property. We're aware of the estate. Please contact us if we get the indication that you and the other heirs have no interest in this property and you're okay with Grafton knocking it down. Instead of, you know, if we could streamline the court process somewhat and perhaps get a consent judgment entered. Haven't heard a word one from Mr. Trent. And that letter went out about 2 weeks ago. That's essentially where that property stands. We would be filing an equity action with the court. We would name Mr. Trent as executor of the estate because there was an estate raised, and that's who we would name. So we should be in a position to get something filed with the court relatively soon, whether we hear from Trent or not. Once we get it filed, we'll have to get some sheriff service on the executor, which I don't think will be a major problem here. 13 Union Avenue, which is on your motion list for tonight, that was one of two properties owned by Michael Calabrese. Mr. Calabrese for 13 Union Avenue made no effort to contest Crafton's efforts to demolish it. We got a judgment and an order of court some time ago. My understanding is a lot of the demolition work's already been done. It's all done at this point. This is to approve final payment. It's important, once the demolition work is done, the municipality has to get a municipal claim filed within 6 months of the completion of the work to lien the property. And as a prerequisite to that, if you want to claim attorney's fees associated with the liening process, you have to get a notice letter out to the owner by certified mail. At least, you don't want to wait till the last minute. You want to get the notice letter out as soon as possible after the demolition work is complete. One final property, this is another Calabrese special, 96 Noble Avenue. That's the property, I think, relatively close to here, with the partial roof collapse. An equity action is pending there. There's also an enforcement action that's pending before Mr. Joyce. Mr. Calabrese has obtained a building permit, and my understanding is roof repair work has begun. There's still ongoing work that needs to be done, and it still needs to be inspected by Mr. Felton, the building inspector. There was a status conference held today in the equity case before Judge O'Reilly. I attended, and attorney Mike Fives, that may be a familiar name, attended on behalf of Mr. Calabrese. So Judge O'Reilly continued the matter for 60 days. I think the plan here is to get Mr. Felton in there for an inspection within that time period. And if it passes muster inspection-wise, then I think the case would just be discontinued at that point. And it would be discontinued without prejudice, so if it became an issue again in the future, we could always refile.
So as you can imagine, the process of entering in and demolishing private property is not an easy one, but one that we are advancing, and the borough has advanced in past years. We are working on a little bit more of a deliberate process, and that Blight and Abandonment Committee will help with that process on the front end, identifying those potential properties. Then once council authorizes the properties to proceed for a year, for a given year, then there's a very detailed process on the code inspection side and on the legal side to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before the bulldozer goes out there. So you have on your agenda tonight an example of 217 Lincoln, which is midstream, a little further than midstream, and then Union, which is 13 Union, which is completely demolished. We're on the back end, just have to file a municipal lien to recover the costs incurred. Any questions about any of those properties? You have a motion for 13 Union. That was an additional cost that was incurred because there was a retaining wall on the site when the contractor was mobilized. It came to our attention that that wall needed to come down in addition to the structure, so we authorized that to proceed because it was a public safety issue. And this is ratifying the approval of that expenditure. And these will be borough funds, which were not included in the CDBG funds, but will come out of the borough's line item for demolition, which is different than the grant funding.
And this would become part of the lien on the property. This would be included in the lien amount on the property. In this case, the municipal claim would be filed on both behalf of the borough for the costs it incurred and on behalf of, technically it's Allegheny County Department of Economic Development for what they contribute. You name both as plaintiffs, and you lien the property for the amount the borough paid, and lien the property for the amount ACDED paid.
Where exactly is 217 Lincoln Avenue? Is that by the?
I think that's out near Duncan Land. I'm pretty sure it is.
Right above the Soto Street.
Yeah. It sits by itself?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah. Is there any benefit to like the fire department?
I don't think there's a problem, but I would have to look at it, but I think it's too curious.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve payment to Continental Construction and Demolition in the amount of $4,275 for additional demolition work in addition to the Shar West Cog CDVG demolition grant as recommended by Gateway Engineers.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Moving on then to finance and discussing the pool project funding.
Okay, so this is a finance discussion and not a recreation discussion, because this is about how, if and how the borough decides to proceed with funding renovations to Crafton Pool. The Recreation Committee would need to be, Recreation Board, would need to be engaged with respect to scoping the project and how we move forward in terms of engaging the public once the funds are designated and a project is identified as moving forward, construction project that is. So the pool renovations came out of the overall park master plan that was done over the last several years, and the recommendation was to improve the pool. One of the recommendations were to improve the pool. Also in that study, there was a specific pool feasibility study that helped to scope a project. So there are about half a dozen important numbers. The first one is 1.2 million. That was the original project that was scoped as part of the pool feasibility study. The borough then proceeded to apply for multiple funding sources. We did receive $250,000 of DCED state money, and that money is for pool renovations. It was received in 2013. As a footnote to that funding source, we are up against the grant contract timeline, so I did just this past week submit to the state an extension request to allow us for additional time because it's going to expire in June of this year. Obviously, we're not under construction, so we don't have an opportunity to expend that money before June of this year. In addition to that, there is a funding source from DCNR of $350,000. Also,
Did you say 150 or
$350,000. Also for the pool renovation project. The final number is $100,000, and that's what you budgeted for this year in terms of borough matching money, primarily to cover soft costs. Because now that we have the feasibility study done and the big picture scope identified, we actually have to design this thing so we know what we're building and prepare construction documents from which to build it. The original approach during the budget capital improvements planning process that we went through last fall, the approach was that we were going to attempt to scale back the project from 1.2 to 700,000. So if you add up the 250 plus the 350 plus our 100, you have 700,000. So the direction from council during the budgeting process for the capital fund, the newly created capital fund, was to see if we can identify a $700,000 project instead of a $1.2 million project. That was a hurdle with respect to getting DCNR approval to phase the project. The $1.2 million was a one-phase project, all the improvements done in one phase. So we needed to ask DCNR for permission to phase the project and expend those funds in multiple phases to get the pool done. However, we also recently came to learn that the DCD money, the Commonwealth Financing Agency money, the CFA money, cannot be matched with the DCNR money. So under that original proposal for that $700,000 project where I said if you add the 250 plus the 350 plus the 100 to get 7, well, we can't match the 250 with the 350 and vice versa. So they have to be spent separately. So you would need to match fully those two separate grant sources. So you've got $100,000 budgeted. You've got, on your side of the ledger, you've got $600,000 on this side of the ledger. You need to come up with 500 more to match all the grant funds to be able to use all those funds. So you're back to a $1.2 million project moving forward with the full scope as originally planned and submitted for the grant applications.
How much was fundraised by the public?
I think 19.
About 20,
Yeah,
yeah.
about 20,000.
20,000 fundraised by the public.
Right.
Is that in
Fundraiser.
addition to the 100,000?
Right, yeah, the 100,000 is a borough council line item budgeted for soft cost expenditures. So, the pressing factor is that if The ideal construction season for pool projects is the day the pool closes, you have bulldozers waiting there while they're toweling off, and they start right then and there in the fall, because that's your longest off-season. You could also have construction in the spring, but there's a couple of reasons why it's not ideal, but you can do it. So to get a project underway, so the bulldozers are revved up on the last day of the pool, we are already a little bit behind. We need to engage a consultant to prepare those construction documents, and then we need to move forward with getting those done, getting the project bid, getting the bid awarded, and having a construction start date with the contractor under contract by the end of August. Well, before that, so you're ready to go at the end of August when the pool closes.
But we still gotta come up with $480,000.
For $480,000. It's easier for me around numbers, but yeah, $480,000. So a couple of options would be to submit for additional grant funding to try and cover the borough's additional $480,000 that we need to come up with. And we would still, though, need to proceed sort of at risk with the design of the pool and the development of the construction documents because, like I said, to stay on that schedule. We requested from CFA that we extend that 250 out until the end of 2016. That would give us this fall, next spring, next fall. But I don't want to assume that we're going to get that extension through the following year. And at best, we'll probably get this fall and next spring, maybe, in terms of windows of opportunity.
Can we break this up over 2 budget seasons?
Sure. I mean, you might have to, we'd have to phase the project in 2 phases and do one spring and one fall, or fall and spring and fall, fall and spring.
Are we doing a complete change of everything at the pool, or is this for repairs for the pool?
No, it's a complete upgrade. It's
Yeah.
It's a
We're not
filtration
ADA
system.
compliant, and the system, the pool system is, what, 20, 30 years?
Yeah, filtration system.
We're not ADA compliant, she said.
We have zero
He
entry.
said that.
Isn't that what you said?
We're not ADA compliant at the swimming pool?
No, not the current code.
Okay. So
Not a current code.
you only have-
What do we need down there?
It's all in the plan that we spent the years on.
I suspect most of that is probably around the bathhouse. You know, because a lot of those change on a regular basis in terms of the
There's a lot of
width.
requirements needed for ADA compliances for your bathhouses and such. I actually redid it over here at the plaza. The toilets have to be a certain height, you have to have railroads a certain distance from the toilets. If you have stalls, you have to have so much room for turning around radiuses of wheelchairs, and it's a big deal.
So DCNR is asking for our proposed phasing. I can't develop the proposed phasing other than roughly, you know, it looks like it could be a 3-phase project. Phase 1 could be the rehab of the zero entry for about $600,000. Phase 2 could be the bathhouse for around $250,000. And phase 3 would be the lap lanes for around $300,000, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly. But we've got to have a consultant on board to develop the specifics of the phases for DCNR to sign off on the phasing plan. We don't have a consultant on board because we don't have a full funding package, so I'm in a little bit of a conundrum.
So just, we're looking, you would need commitment of council for roughly $480,000 to redo the pool over this year and into next year.
To redo the full project and fully utilize all the available grant funding, yes.
And some of that might be able to be covered by additional grant funds.
Right.
Might, but that's a might. Because there's another round of DCNR in April, and there's another round, I think, of the DCED money this summer. So in
And
the
DCNR was
meantime-
favorable, preliminarily, they were favorable of scoping or phasing the project, and were encouraging us to submit another grant application, but that's not a guarantee, which is why I'm hesitant to bring to you a proposal for $80,000 in design costs without having some certainty as to the full funding for the project.
Just one more, so the whole recreation package that we got studied, we're just tackling right now 1.2 just for the pool, and then how much is left in the rest of the study?
Oh, that'd be millions.
Yeah. We're not obligated to do all the pieces
No,
of the
I
study.
know that.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we're just doing that whole structure?
Right, that's what we got the
Nothing.
current grants for.
Okay.
We still have an opportunity to fundraise as well, correct?
better start now.
Yeah, before our name.
Sorry.
Well, but we do.
And John, some of the DCED grant can be used to match the design money too, right? I believe, when I looked at the contract. We have to
Our money,
ask.
right,
Our money can match some of the DCED
Right.
for design
right,
pieces. So we may not have to use all of ours.
right.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I need some kind of direction, you're not off the hook. If that was your attempt to move on, I'm sorry.
Can we
It
not,
was clearly just a discussion.
can we not put in motion on the agenda for the first meeting in March to, I don't know if we have to reopen the money or reallocate money or not?
It's a lot of money to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, at least have the discussion and the vote, you know what I mean?
Well, right now, wouldn't you just need a motion to authorize the RFP for design? Or-
Yeah, but I was specifically hesitant to do that because I've been asked by several people not to do that, to get direction from council first with respect to how you'd like to proceed with the project. If you'd like, you can certainly do it now. If you want to authorize the RFP to go out for design, you just need to know that it's at risk in a sense because we don't have a full funding package.
And that RFP, that money's already built into our budget.
That will come out of our 100,000.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Yep.
What will we get risk for then?
You'd spend 80,000 on design that you can't
Yeah,
build.
good.
Yeah, you could be just wasting your time.
Well, then I think we wasted a lot of
If we
time,
could-
then if
we-
we put this whole package together, we got the input and participation of several dozens of residents.
What I'm saying
Why
is
did
if
we
we
do
don't
it?
have 480,000 more to put into this, you're gonna waste 80,000 and not have the money put into it.
I mean, I guess my overall point is, you know, we've gotten 500, 600,000 in grants, why wouldn't we take this
But we have to
opportunity?
match those.
Exactly.
Why don't we,
And I want to clarify too, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you design the project, you could still move forward at some point building something. So we could still design the project now and then move forward with a phase one and only use $350,000 worth of the grant money, and you have to come up with 100 plus 250. You know what I mean?
for our next meeting, can you develop, you know, those ideas? Scenarios of maybe even borrowing.
Sure.
You know, those types of things, the cost of the money to borrow, what the cost would be.
Yep.
All those ideas, so we have a better understanding of maybe annual poll passes sold, so we know how many residents are selling, how many people come through the turnstile. If we're gonna spend $1.2 million, we only have 100 poll passes sold. I mean, is that,
If we're gonna spend 600,000.
okay, well, it's
Matching
1.2,
grants.
Right.
but the project itself, somebody's spending, it's coming out of our money somewhere, either state government or something.
So I think it's safe to say that if we did that on our discussion meeting for early March and then at the end of March, we probably need to have the consultant underway soon thereafter. So it's okay to put both of those things on the agenda, financing discussion and authorization to go out to RFP for the pool design. Somebody will be here. I'll call in from, I don't know.
Yes.
Just add a comment if you're interested. First question is, do you have to go out for RFP? Because that takes time. If you don't, you can use your existing engineer. We have pool experience. We've done pool rehab, so we can do that type of work. So I don't know if you want to, or if you have to, or just need to. I'm just throwing that as an option. You could save the time that it takes to RFP, do the interviews, and go through all that process, and you can start right away if timing's an issue. If not, then you go the RFP process, then we'll be there too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on then to planning and comprehensive planning. Sean?
Okay, well, I'm gonna cede my time, most of my time, to the councilwoman to my right here, but we are working on the consultant selection process for the comprehensive plan. The grants are still pending. We submitted additional information to The state's early intervention program, which is where we're hoping to get the state bucket of money. We also have a pending grant application with the county, and my conversation with them a week or so ago, they were requesting some additional information and also wanted to know the status on the manager search, so I provided that to them. And the committee, so we also had the joint resolution between Kraft and Ingram, you guys did at the end of last